So I bet you're wondering what we're going to be talking about today. So it's kind of obvious, right? We have a little something going on up here. So we're going to be talking about risks, taking risk, releasing attachments, and forgiving. And in those ways, we come to new understandings. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So I have a few jokes. Yes, I have a few jokes, and bet you're wondering what the big old bike is doing up here in front, so I thought I'd get things rolling with a few jokes. Get it rolling? That's the first one. Okay. The second one is, why doesn't the bicycle like to stand on its own? Because it's too tired. Okay, I know it's a groaner. So one more and we're all done with jokes today. So why did the little girl want to take the bicycle to bed with her? Because she didn't want to walk in her sleep. Yes, so we're going to be taking a little joyride. We're going to be talking about our experiences of freedom, how we lost sight of them, and how we get them back through new understandings. And that's the freedom we're talking about today, coming into new understandings. When I talk about taking a risk, I'm sure many of you can relate to my first experience of taking a risk. When I first learned how to ride a two-wheel bike, it had training wheels on it, right? And I thought those training wheels were keeping me safe because as long as the training wheels stayed on the bike, I was able to keep my balance, right? And I wasn't going to fall off my bike because the training wheels were on, right? But once those training wheels came off and I was free to experience, woohoo! I'm sure most of you can remember that experience. Going down the road to visit your friends and the training wheels were on your bike, you're like, I don't have training wheels on my bike anymore, right? And you started to experience this newfound freedom. And as such, what did you do? You started to learn new tricks, right? Because you became confident in your ability, well, I think I like this idea of freedom, right? So you'd have your friend jump on your banana seat and the two of you would try to pedal off down the road. And that was a newfound freedom. Sometimes you would try to pop a wheelie, right? And another thing you would do, ride past your mom or your dad and throw your hands in the air and say, look, Mom, no hands. And I'm sure she loved that, right? So as we began to experience these freedoms, we became confident. In order to ride hands-free like that, we had to take risks. We had to keep balance, stay focused. And always, we had to keep pedaling, right? You can't stop pedaling. And somewhere along the way, we lost a bit of our childhood resiliency. See, something happened. And the equivalent of falling off our bikes as a child is when we attach ourselves to fears and worries in life. When we buy into the fears and our attachments to whatever it is we're attempting to control in our lives, it's taking away our freedom. And I know when fears and worries start to consume me, I feel bound up, restricted, and chained down with the things I'm worrying about. I feel confined. But I do this to myself. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm not alone in these experiences, am I? So how many of you have found yourselves worrying about situations over which you have no control? Yes. Thank you for being honest. Yes. And what would happen if we released our attachments to specific outcomes? Because that's really what the worrying is all about. Our attachment to a specific outcome. And we can wonder how we'll get through any given situation. And the answers will always come regardless or not if we worry about them. The answer's still going to happen. So, if I use the bicycle analogy, what came to me is when something blocks your way and you're on a bike, what do? You ring your bell, and honk your horn, and you move things out of the way, right? So you can make your way through whatever's blocking your way. And you have to keep pedaling. When we first learned to ride our bikes, we didn't allow fears, falls, and crashes to stop us, did we? If we fell off our bike, we picked them back up. Now, mind you, skinned knees, stones attached, bleeding, and all, and we drove off. We didn't care that, that happened. So you have to keep pedaling until you reach a place of new understanding. And guess what? Coming into a place of new understanding sometimes isn't easy. That's why they have helmets. It gets a bit rocky and bumpy at times, and you get jostled around, right? And it's not a downhill coastal ride to come into a new understanding. It's an uphill climb sometimes. And you really have to pedal with all your might to make it to the top. But on the other side of that is the freedom you seek, the new understanding. Have you ever had anything in your life where you thought something was no longer working for you? Singer Janis Joplin sang, "Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose." And when it comes to that point in your life and you have nothing left to lose, you're pushed into the point of a new understanding. And I know this happened for me in my life, and I'm sure many of you can relate to a point in your life too where you had a new understanding because you were pushed and something was no longer acceptable in your life, which is what I feel Janis Joplin was saying. She was pushed to the point where a state of being that no longer worked for her, and she was open to a new understanding. And in my life, I had 4 members of my immediate family had died, and a 5th was nearly a homicide. When something like that happens, you're pushed into ways of new understanding. You start to reevaluate your life. You start to think, what do I really think is important? And I discovered at that time the people I lost and the relationships I had, those were what was important in my life. Up until that time, I was consumed with getting ahead in my career, getting better possessions, getting farther ahead in life. The new understanding came when I realized the people I really valued in my life, the relationships I had formed that I would never have again, that was when I was pushed into a new understanding. I wouldn't miss the possessions. I would miss the people that were no longer here. So I had to take risks when I was pushed into this new understanding. And guess what? I'm not the only one who had to take risks. As well as most of you, Jesus also had to take risks too. When Jesus began preaching, people asked, "Who gave you the authority to make such proclamations?" And Jesus said, "My Father taught me to speak truth." In John, it says, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." Jesus was talking about truth. He said you might want to consider, and then he suggested if they were willing, truth would be revealed to them. Jesus wasn't trying to control anyone. He was sharing his experiences. Jesus was setting an example. And the truth may not have been what the people were ready and willing to hear in his time. And still today we struggle with that as well. When we attach ourselves to certain outcomes, because when we release that control, we're given new ways of understanding. a new way of seeing something. And that's what Jesus wanted us to know. A new way of understanding something reveals truths that set us free. That's what that Bible verse is all about. So I want to share a story in the book of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. All three of those Bible, they are talking about a woman who was an outcast. And the woman was an outcast, and she wanted to touch Jesus' robe because she wanted to be healed. So even though people were throwing stones at her and ridiculing her, she made her way through the people to get to Jesus, to touch his robe so she could be healed. And Jesus said, when the woman reached him, "Who touched my robe?" And she said, "I did." And Jesus said, "Your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And she was healed. Why I think this story is so important is because what we're talking about in this Bible verse and these stories today, she was willing. She took a risk. She went through a crowd of people that threw stones at her and ridiculed her. And still, she made her way through the crowd and went up and touched Jesus' robe. And she had the faith. Therefore, she was healed. So she had received a new understanding. When we're given new ways of understanding, what does that mean? It means we have to claim our freedom. And sometimes claiming our freedom means we have to release someone else from the chains of unforgiveness so we can become free ourselves. Have any of you ever experienced this kind of suffering? When you hold on to all the pain because you can't bear releasing someone else from the expectations you have of them. I've been guilty of that in the past myself. Forgive them. Let it go. When you surrender that, there's freedom in that release. Claiming our freedom means we stop waiting for someone else to give us what we need. And we start taking responsibility for ourselves. Claiming our freedom means we release our attachments to specific outcomes, certain ideas, and expectations. And Spirit's telling me to throw this in here, because I don't know if you all are aware, but we were supposed to be riding bicycles to experience freedom after the service today. And it's 50 degrees and raining. And I had to release that. I had an expectation that is not going to be met today. I'm sorry to inform you all. It's unfortunate, but we have to release that and let it go. So what we preach about, we get to learn about too. Isn't that a great thing? And remember, freedom comes when we receive new understandings. And new understandings come, I have a 4-point thing here, and I'll let you know what they are. We have to get the facts. Sometimes we have to ask for help if we don't know what the facts are, because we get confused in our own minds, and we start creating some things that are not really facts. They're our own little stories, right? So we have to get the facts. We have to have faith in what we can't see. That's 2. Have faith that you're being guided and directed. And the 3rd is affirm that you have the ability to make right decisions, knowing God works as you, in you, and through you. And the 4th, surrender. Surrender to God. Release. Let it go. So what would happen if we would apply these steps in our lives to attain freedom? Well, I can tell you Myrtle had it figured out. When she wrote a letter to somebody requesting prayer in 1930, and I'm going to share it with you all today. God gave you the mastery and dominion over all ideas, desires, impulses, illusions, thoughts, and such things. When you feel the undesirable spells coming on, assert your I am power. Deny them. Affirm the truth of your oneness with God mind. And you will not be affected by the states of mind that are unpleasant to you and try to deceive you into believing that they have reality and power over you. It's a pretty profound statement from Myrtle, isn't it? It's powerful. To live in freedom, we have to release what's ever holding us back. We have to take risks. We have to trust and have faith. Because if we don't have that, we're chained up. And as such, that's taking away our freedom. And sometimes the things we perceive to be keeping us safe, like the training wheels on the bicycle, are keeping us from experiencing that freedom. We didn't realize we were missing out until the training wheels came off the bike. So I hope you've made some discoveries on our journey today, on our joyride. I hope you remember the experiences of freedom we talked about today. I hope you remember how you lost sight of them. And more importantly, I hope you remember how to get them back. It involves taking risks, releasing attachments, forgiving, getting the facts, having faith, affirming God works as you, in you, and through you, and surrender to God. These are the steps to achieving new levels of understanding. I would invite you all to prepare for meditation. Clear off your laps. And let's just take a moment to experience those freedoms and new understandings in meditation here today. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and release it. Feel yourself sinking deeper into your chair. And becoming more conscious of the Christ mind within. Allow any fears and worries to be released in the silence, in that space. It's safe. Release any limiting opinions or views of yourself or of another. Let it go. Surrender to Spirit. Allow yourself to be open to new understandings. Allow that Christ light within you to develop and shine. I invite you in the silence to take in this affirmation as your own. I experience true freedom as I awaken to new understandings in the silence. When you are ready, I invite you to say, thank you, God, for all the truths that set you free, to allow you to experience that freedom, a new understanding. And we are grateful.